Hello and welcome students. In yesterday's video, we have seen the principle and construction of moving coil galvanometer. In today's video, we will discuss theory and working and sensitivity of galvanometer. Okay, so here is in front of you theory and working. When the current is passed through the coil, a deflection torque acts on the coil and the coil starts turning. So here in the diagram you can see this coil is present in a magnetic field N and S. This is one magnetic field. This coil is placed in the magnetic field. When the current pass through the coil, okay, what happened? This magnetic field will apply force on coil and that's why the coil starts turning. When the coil turn, this suspension wire, okay, it get twisted and restoring torque comes into play in the suspension wire to oppose the deflecting torque. Okay, and when the coil turns more, the restoring force also increases, and one stage comes when it becomes to the equal to the deflecting torque. This is called the equilibrium position of the coil. Okay, so one position where the torque, because of the force applied by magnetic field, that torque and the restoring force, they come in equilibrium. Okay, that position is called the equilibrium position of the coil. In this situation, suppose the suspension wire get deflected by angle theta. Okay, so in equilibrium what happened? The deflecting torque is equals to restoring torque. Now deflecting torque is this one, NIAB cos alpha. This value of torque we have derived yesterday. So this deflecting torque is equals to restoring force, where restoring force we have written as C theta. Okay, where alpha is the angle which the plane of the coil makes with the direction of the magnetic field. C is the torsion constant. Okay, for restoring force in class 11th we have studied torsion constant. So this is C of the suspension wire and theta is the angle of twist. Okay, and the value of torsion constant given by this formula, pi eta r to the power 4 upon 2L. The cylindrical soft iron core placed symmetrically between the pole pieces produces a radial magnetic field. Okay, so this is the front view of galvanometer. That was the cross sectional view and this is the view from the upside. So this is our coil and this is our magnetic field. So because of this soft iron, what happened? Radial magnetic field is produced there. So in this type of field, the field line pass through the axis of the cylindrical gap between end and S. Okay, here this is the cylindrical gap. Hence, the plane of the coil in all position will remain parallel to the field lines. Are you understanding this? When the coil remains parallel to the field lines, then only we are getting the torque. Okay, so here what happened, because radial magnetic field is produced, so whatever position the coil have, it will always be parallel to the magnetic field. So the value of alpha is 0, okay, and cos 0 is 1. So we have this value, NIAB equals to C theta, or theta equals to NAB upon C into I. So NAB upon C, these are constant. So basically what we have I directly proportional to theta. I directly proportional to theta, it means that if more current will flow, the deflection will be more. Okay, so that's why we can measure the amount of current by we can sense the amount of current by galvanometer. If more current will flow, more deflection will be there. So same thing is written here, that deflection of the coil is directly proportional to the current flowing through the coil. So more current means more deflection. Now let's discuss the sensitivity. Okay, current sensitivity and voltage sensitivity of galvanometer. First of all, let us discuss about the current sensitivity of a galvanometer. So it is defined as the deflection per unit current passed through it. Deflection per unit current passed through it. So whatever formula of deflection we got, that was theta equals to NAB upon C into I. Okay, from this equation only we get that theta equals to NABI upon C. Now because we have to see the deflection per unit current, so deflection is divided by I, so this side also we divide by I, so I get cancel. Or simply we can take it from this formula only. If we want to find out theta upon I, so I will come here and C will go there. So theta upon I equals to NBA upon C. This is the value of current sensitivity. Okay, and it is measured in radian per ampere. Radian is the unit of theta and ampere is the unit of current. So radian per ampere. Now voltage sensitivity is defined as the deflection per unit potential difference applied across the galvanometer. Okay, so theta upon V we have to find out, and V equals to Ig. So when we put that value in this equation, from this equation, okay, if we write it in this form, so theta upon I we have, but G we don't have, so G we divide in both the terms. Okay, so theta upon Ig equals to NBA upon Cg, where G is the resistance of the galvanometer. Voltage equals to current into resistance. So voltage V equals to I into G, current into resistance. Okay. Now one more thing we can see here from these two, this one and this one, these two equation, that current sensitivity upon resistance of galvanometer. Okay, this is the value of voltage sensitivity. So voltage sensitivity equals to current sensitivity upon resistance of galvanometer, and its unit of voltage sensitivity is radian per volt. Now one more thing you have to remember, that increase in current sensitivity may not necessarily increase the voltage sensitivity of a galvanometer. Okay, this thing you keep in your mind. Now next topic is requirement for a sensitive galvanometer. Okay, why the galvanometer should be sensitive? So a galvanometer is said to be sensitive if it shows a large deflection for a small current passed through it. Current sensitivity theta upon I equals to NBA upon C. Okay, so for a given value of current, deflection theta will be large when N is large. That means the number of turns in the coil is large. Second, B is large, that is the magnetic field is large. Third, A is large. A is what? A equals to L into B, length into breadth. It is the area of the coil. And C is small. C is our torsion constant. It should be small. Now, N should be large, but its value cannot be increased beyond a certain point. It is because large value of N will increase the resistance of the coil. Okay, as we increase the number of turns, that means the length of the coil increases. If the length of the coil increases, that means resistance also increases. Hence what happens? The sensitivity will decrease. So here you can see the contradiction. N, number of turns. If we increase number of turns, current sensitivity will increase. But ultimately what happens? If number of turn will increase, it will further increase the resistance, and that's why the current sensitivity will decrease. So to increase the value of N is practically limited. Okay, beyond a certain value it cannot be increased. Then second, the value of B should be large. This can be done by using strong horseshoe magnet. So this is not a problematic area. Then third, the value of A should be large, but there is a limit up to which A can be increased. See, A is the area of coil. Okay, area also can be increased in a certain limited value. Okay, because what happen, if we increase the area more, then the size of galvanometer also increases, and large size coil makes it bulky and unmanageable. The value of C should be small. It also can't made very small because coil will swing for a long time about its equilibrium position. As C is very small for phosphorus, bronze and quartz, these are used as suspension wires in galvanometer. So then we have one Western or pivotal coil galvanometer. It's not very bulky and it's more sensitive than moving coil galvanometer. Okay. The suspended coil galvanometer is very sensitive and requires a careful handling. The pivoted coil galvanometer is less sensitive. Sorry, I said it more, but it is less. So it is less sensitive but more convenient than the suspended coil galvanometer. It is therefore used in laboratories. So in laboratories we use pivotal or coil galvanometer. Sorry, pivotal coil galvanometer. In this coil you can see the structure. This is one magnet, okay, which produces the radial magnetic field, and this is the coil here. The coil is placed on a pivot spring, and that's why it is called Western or pivoted coil, okay. And when the current pass through coil, this pointer, this will move on the scale, and hence we can see that the current is flowing in the coil, okay. But it is less sensitive than moving coil galvanometer. Now let's discuss measurement of voltage and current. So first we will discuss about voltmeter. It is a device used to measure the potential difference between 2 points in a circuit. A voltmeter is essentially a galvanometer with a high resistance connected in series with it. This thing you have to remember, that how galvanometer can be converted into voltmeter. So galvanometer can be converted into voltmeter by connecting a high resistance in series with it, okay. The value of the high resistance connected depends upon the maximum voltage to be measured with the help of the voltmeter. So here from this figure you can see how galvanometer is converted into voltmeter. See, this is galvanometer and in series we have connected one high resistance. So this arrangement becomes voltmeter, and now it can measure the voltage. According to Ohm's law, voltage equals to current into resistance. So here for this arrangement, voltage V equals to Ig. Ig is the current flowing through the galvanometer into total resistance of the circuit is G plus R. G is the resistance of galvanometer and R is the resistance of that high resistance wire. So total resistance is G plus R, or when we multiply Ig inside and further rearrange this, we get R equals to V upon Ig minus G. So this is the value of R, okay. If we put the value of V, I and G, we can get the required value of R to be connected in galvanometer to connect it in to convert it in form of voltmeter. One more point to remember, an ideal voltmeter should have an infinite resistance. Now let's discuss about ammeter. Ammeter is a device which is used to measure the current in the electrical circuits. It is a galvanometer with a low resistance called the shunt connected in parallel with it. So here you can see the arrangement. This is the galvanometer with galvanometer in parallel combination. One low resistance is connected and this low resistance is called a shunt. So this S symbol is showing shunt. The value of the shunt depends upon the maximum value of the current I to be measured with the ammeter. Now in parallel combination, what happened? Whatever current is coming here at this point, that current split it up into two parts. Okay, current Ig will pass through the galvanometer and I minus Ig will pass through the shunt. And at this point again they meet and becomes I. So here we have this equation, I minus Ig into S. This is the amount of current passing through shunt. So current into resistance of shunt. Current into resistance equals to current into resistance through the galvanometer. When we rearrange this equation, S equals to Ig G upon I minus Ig. Okay, by putting the value of Ig, G and I, we can find out the value of shunt, which is to be connected in the galvanometer to convert it in ammeter. And the net resistance of the ammeter, Ra, is given by this formula. Because in parallel combination, the reciprocals are added, so we get this formula. Okay, 1 upon Ra equals to 1 upon G plus 1 upon S, or Ra equals to Gs upon G plus S. And for an ideal ammeter, there should have no resistance or zero resistance. In case of voltmeter, the resistance should be very high. That's why we connect the high resistance wire in series with galvanometer. But in case of ammeter, the resistance should be very low, which approximately 0. And that's why a very low resistance shunt is connected in parallel with the galvanometer. Now next topic is motion of a charged particle in a uniform magnetic field. Okay, so here you have this charged particle Q, which is placed in a magnetic field. This is the lines showing the magnetic field B. This charged particle is having mass m. It is moving in this direction. So this is the velocity direction of charged particle. So when the particle is moving in magnetic field by making any angle theta, so the Lorentz magnetic force acting on the particle is given by this equation, or it can be written like this: F equals to QVB sin theta. Okay, F always acts perpendicular to both V and B. Now we will discuss the effect of Lorentz force on the motion of the charged particle and its trajectory in the field. That means when the charged particle is moving in the field, so if it makes different angles with the field, so what kind of path it traveled, that we will discuss now. So first case, when the particle moves parallel or anti-parallel to magnetic field, so that time the angle between particle and field will be 0 degree or 180 degree. So that time sin 0 or sin 180 is 0, its value is 0. So that's why F also becomes 0. That means no magnetic force acts on the particle and the particle keeps moving in the same direction with the same velocity. Okay, no force will disturb that particle. Now second case, when the particle moves at right angles to the direction of magnetic field, so that time the value of theta is 90 degree, sin 90 is 1. When we put that value here, so F equals to QVB. Now according to right hand screw rule or Fleming's left hand rule, what happened? This force F, this will act horizontally along PO. So here you can see, suppose this is the particle. Okay, the particle is moving in perpendicular direction with the field. So what happened? The force will act here and the force tries to move the particle in horizontal direction. The particle is moving in vertical direction, but the force is trying to move it in horizontal direction. And one thing also you keep in mind, that this force does not change the magnitude of the particle. Okay, with whatever velocity, whatever momentum the particle is moving, it will follow that same, but only the direction will change. So what happened? The particle keeps deviating from its initial direction of motion under the influence of this force, which always points horizontally towards point O. So therefore what happened? The particle starts moving in a circular path. Okay, the particle wants to move in vertical direction, but force pushes it in horizontal direction towards O. So that's why what happened? The particle starts moving in a circular direction. Now suppose the radius of this circular path is r. Okay, this particle is moving in circular direction, and suppose the radius of that path is r. Now we already know that if any particle is moving in circular path, there must be the centripetal force. Okay. Now suppose this is the centripetal force mv square upon r, and this centripetal force is given by the Lorentz force. So that's why mv square upon r is equals to qvb. About centripetal force we have already discussed in class 11th in detail, that whenever any object is moving in circular path, there must be a centripetal force. Okay, because of that force only the object continue moving in circular path. And here in this case, what thing is providing the centripetal force? It is because of the Lorentz force. So that's why these two are equal, or we can get r equals to mv upon qb. So this is the formula for the radius of the circular path in which the object will move. And clearly the radius depends on mass of the particle, velocity of the particle, charge of the particle, and the magnetic field. Okay. So if mass and velocity of the particle is more, the radius will be more. That means it will move in a large circle. But if the charge on the particle or the magnetic field, their value is more, then the radius of the circular path will be less. Now period of revolution. See, time equals to total distance upon velocity. So total distance travelled in the circular path will be the perimeter of the circle. So 2 pi r upon velocity v. This will be the period of revolution. Okay. Now if we substitute the value of v equals to qbr upon m. Now from where this value come? From here, from this equation. This equation we can find out the value of v also. So v equals to qbr upon m. When we put this value of v here, we get t equals to 2 pi m upon qb. r will get cancelled. Okay, and we have 2 pi m upon qb. Now this is the value of time period. Okay, period of revolution. So what will be the frequency? Frequency will be just opposite to this. Okay, so frequency will be qb upon 2 pi m. Here don't be confused. Here this symbol is showing the velocity and this is the frequency. Okay, in copy you can write v and nu in different ways. Okay, like v you write simple v and nu you can write in cursive writing. So it will be easy for you to understand. Don't be confused. This is velocity, but this one is frequency. Frequency is opposite to time period, sorry, reciprocal of time period. So when we find out the reciprocal, it will be frequency. So qb upon 2 pi m. This is it for today's lecture. The third case of motion of a charged particle in uniform magnetic field and the topic of motion of a charged particle in electric field. That all we discuss in our next lecture. Till then, goodbye, take care, do some productive work.